The silence of space, that vast, unforgiving expanse, had been a familiar companion to Captain Zara Helix for what felt like centuries. Her ship, the Vanguard, a sleek battle cruiser, cut through the endless void as it had countless times before. But today was different. Today, there was an undercurrent of something that hummed just beneath the surface of the usual intergalactic calm. It was as though the stars themselves were watching, waiting, whispering. Zara leaned against the cool, metallic wall of the command deck, her dark eyes scanning the star-streaked window. She wasn't supposed to be here, not for another year. The Vanguard had been en route to a remote part of the galaxy to drop off supplies to a forgotten colony, a mission that should have been routine. But then they'd intercepted the distress signal. The signal that had brought them here, to the edge of known space, to the strange planet that no one had mapped, no one had cared to map, and yet, now everyone was suddenly interested in. "Captain," a voice broke through her reverie. It was Commander Lorna, her second in command, stepping into the control room with a data pad in hand. "The anomaly's closer than we thought. We should be entering the atmosphere within the hour." Zara nodded, pushing herself off the wall and striding to the captain's chair. "Understood, Commander. Keep me updated on all readings. No surprises." Lorna didn't look convinced. "You don't think there's something odd about this planet? The signal, it's not just distress. It's a warning. It's almost like they were trying to get us to stay away." Zara met her gaze. "I trust our sensors. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it. We've faced worse." Lorna raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The Vanguard was a ship built for situations like this, crises, sudden encounters, unknown forces. The crew was handpicked, their skills honed over years of battle and exploration. But even the best-trained crew had their limits. Something about this planet, about this mission, felt different. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," Zara ordered, her voice calm but firm. "We'll figure this out. Together." The descent into the planet's atmosphere was unnervingly smooth. Zara had expected turbulence, chaos, even some form of atmospheric interference, but there was nothing. The readings were off, too precise, too calculated. It was as though the planet was ready for them, anticipating their arrival. Something was wrong. "All systems are green," reported Lorna, her eyes flicking over the controls with practiced ease. "We're clearing the clouds now. The surface is..." She stopped, and Zara felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. The planet's surface, it was wrong. It was almost perfectly symmetrical, with strange geometric patterns cutting across the landscape like someone had drawn them. Zara squinted at the monitor, her curiosity piqued. This wasn't natural. The patterns didn't belong in nature, they felt artificial, as though they had been designed by an intelligence, something deliberate. A strange beep echoed through the bridge. "Captain, I'm picking up a communication signal," Lorna said, tapping rapidly on her console. "It's not a standard transmission. It's like they're trying to connect with us. It's..." On screen, Zara interrupted, her tone sharp. The screen flickered to life, displaying an image of a figure standing in what appeared to be a vast, empty chamber. The being was humanoid, but its features were obscured by a strange metallic sheen, as if its face had been smoothed into a smooth mask. It spoke in a language Zara didn't understand, but the urgency was clear. Lorna was already on the controls, attempting to decipher the signal. "It's encrypted, Captain, but I think I can break it. I just need a few more minutes." Zara nodded, her mind already racing through possible scenarios. Who was this being? What did it want? And more importantly, why was it reaching out to them now, after all this time? "Commander," Zara said, standing up from her chair, "is the distress signal still active?" Lorna glanced at her screen. "Yes, it's still coming through. It's intermittent, though, cutting in and out. We need to find out who, or what, is on the other end of that signal," Zara said firmly. "Get me everything you can on that transmission. I want answers, now." As Lorna worked furiously, Zara glanced out the viewport once again. The planet's surface had started to shift, as if the strange patterns were growing, expanding with every passing second. It wasn't just a landscape anymore. It was alive, and it was changing. "Captain," Lorna's voice broke through her thoughts. "I've cracked part of the code. It's not just a warning. It's a plea for help. But there's something else embedded in it." A threat, perhaps?" Zara's brow furrowed. "A threat? From who? From what?" Lorna looked up from her screen, her face pale. "I don't know, Captain. But it's like whoever sent this message is afraid, terrified, even. They're warning us not to land here, but they also want us to help them. It's almost like a paradox." Zara's grip on the armrests tightened. "How long do we have until we reach the surface?" 10 minutes, Lorna replied. The stakes were growing, and Zara could feel the tension tightening around her chest. She could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. The message was cryptic, yes, but the fear was undeniable. Something terrible had happened on this planet, and it was far too late to turn back. She glanced over at her crew, strong, capable people who had followed her through countless battles and unexplored galaxies. But today, something felt different. They were about to confront something they couldn't predict, something they couldn't prepare for. And she wasn't sure if they would make it out alive. "Prepare for landing," Zara said, her voice steady but filled with an unspoken command. "Whatever's down there, we face it head-on. We don't run from challenges. We face them." As the ship continued its descent, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap set by forces far beyond their understanding. And the worst part? They might not be the ones setting it. "You said." The Vanguard touched down with a soft hum, its landing gear making contact with the eerily symmetrical surface of the unknown planet. The moment the ship's engines powered down, an unsettling silence followed. Zara sat still for a beat, her fingers tightening on the armrests of her chair as she surveyed the view through the viewport. The geometric shapes across the landscape seemed to pulse, as though the ground itself was alive, breathing in sync with her heartbeat. Something was definitely wrong here. "All systems nominal," Lorna reported, her voice tense. "We've landed." "But Captain, you should see this." Zara's eyes narrowed. She stood up from her chair and approached the control panel where Lorna was sitting, her fingers flying across the screen with practiced precision. The planet's surface was now visible in more detail. The geometric patterns weren't just random, they were deliberate. Hundreds, if not thousands, of structures, arranged in near-perfect symmetry, stretched out in every direction. Buildings, or what appeared to be buildings, lined the landscape. Some were as tall as skyscrapers, others no more than the height of a house. Each one had an odd, metallic sheen to it, a strange glimmer that seemed to shift with the light. "The structures seem to be made of some kind of advanced material," Lorna said, her voice laced with caution. "It's not like anything in the Federation's database." "We need to be careful," Zara murmured, staring at the screen. "If this planet is as mysterious as it looks, there's no telling what we'll find down there." "Captain," one of the other crew members, Lieutenant Teal, called from across the room. "We're detecting more movement. From the surface. It's like they're watching us." Zara turned, her pulse quickening. "What do you mean they? Are there beings down there?" "Not beings, exactly," Teal said, his eyes wide with unease. "It's not biological. It's more like shadows. Moving, shifting, but not in a way that suggests life forms. It's like the ground itself is, reacting to us." Zara took a deep breath. The situation was growing more bizarre by the second, but she wouldn't let fear take hold. "We can't stay on this ship forever. Prepare the team. We're going down." Minutes later, Zara stood at the hatch of the Vanguard, suited up in her armored exosuit, her breath shallow as she watched the hatch slowly open. A gust of cool air hit her face, carrying with it the faintest hint of something metallic. The ground outside was smooth, polished almost, reflecting the dim light of the distant stars. The rest of her team had already gathered, all in full gear, their weapons holstered but ready. Commander Lorna, Lieutenant Teal, and the rest of the crew stood beside her, their faces masked in determination but clearly on edge. No one spoke, as though words would somehow draw unwanted attention. "Stay alert," Zara ordered, stepping down onto the alien surface. "We're here to find answers. And we're not leaving until we get them." The ground beneath their boots was firm, though the sensation was slightly off. It felt too smooth, almost like walking on glass. As they advanced further into the strange landscape, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to grow longer, darker, moving in ways that defied logic. At times, they would turn a corner only to find a building had shifted position, its once static position now skewed, as though the very architecture was alive and constantly adjusting. "Captain," Teal said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Look at this." Zara turned to where Teal was pointing, her stomach twisting with unease. Before them stood a structure, taller than the rest, with an odd angular shape. It almost resembled a monument, except it was covered in faint etchings, runic symbols that Zara had never seen before. They glowed with an eerie blue light, casting strange reflections on the ground around them. Lorna moved toward the structure cautiously. "It's like they were trying to communicate, but this language, it's not any of ours. No known species uses symbols like this." Zara stepped forward, her boots clicking softly against the ground. She reached out, her gloved fingers grazing the surface of the structure. A jolt of electricity ran through her, and her body stiffened, but she didn't pull back. The symbols on the monument flared to life, each one glowing brighter, pulsating with a rhythm that seemed to match the beat of her heart. "Captain," Lorna said, her voice tinged with alarm. "I think it's responding to you." Before Zara could respond, the ground trembled beneath them. The structures around them began to shift more violently, like they were waking up. From the corner of her eye, she saw a crack form in the sky, a deep, red fissure that began to widen, casting an eerie, crimson glow across the landscape. "Get to cover!" Zara barked, but her warning was barely audible over the sudden roar of the wind that whipped up from nowhere. The planet seemed to react violently to their presence, as though the very atmosphere was resisting them. The team scattered, but the ground beneath their feet began to split open, revealing deep chasms that hadn't been there moments ago. From these cracks, strange, dark tendrils emerged, slithering across the surface, reaching out toward them like hungry fingers. It was as if the planet itself was coming to life, reacting to their intrusion in ways that defied every known law of physics. "Captain, what the hell is happening?" Lorna shouted, her voice cracking with fear. "I don't know," Zara replied through gritted teeth, her eyes scanning the horizon. "But we need to get to that structure. It's the only thing that might help us understand what's going on." With a burst of adrenaline, Zara sprinted toward the monument, the ground beneath her feet shifting in unnatural ways. The tendrils were closing in, but something in the back of her mind told her that the monument held the answers they needed. As she reached it, she slammed her palm against the glowing symbols, hoping for some kind of response. The symbols flared brightly, blinding her for a moment. When her vision cleared, the air around them had thickened, and the tendrils had stopped. The landscape had changed again, settling into a strange stillness, as though the planet had finally caught its breath. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure: the planet wasn't just trying to warn them anymore. It was testing them. And they had just passed the first test. The stillness was almost worse than the chaos that had preceded it. Zara stood frozen, her hands still resting on the glowing symbols of the monument. The strange tendrils had receded, slithering back into the cracks from which they came. The planet had calmed, but it wasn't the calm of safety, it was the calm of a predator, waiting for its next strike. "Captain," Lorna's voice cut through the heavy silence, a mixture of relief and wariness in her tone. "What just happened?" "It stopped attacking, but..." "Not attacking," Zara interrupted, her eyes narrowing as she surveyed the landscape. "Testing. The planet's testing us. That monument, it's key. It knows we're here for a reason, and it wants us to prove we're worthy." Teal, who had been scanning the horizon, stepped forward, his face pale with unease. Worthy? We're barely staying alive as it is. Whatever that was, it's not natural. There's something much bigger going on here. I know, Zara said, her voice steady despite the chaos that had just unfolded. And that's why we need to push forward. We've come this far, and turning back isn't an option. She looked at her crew, each of them visibly shaken, but also resolute. They had survived the first wave of this planet's strange defense mechanisms, but the real challenge was only just beginning. They were on the precipice of something enormous, something that could either lead them to answers, or to their doom. Move out, Zara commanded. We're going to the center of this place. If the monument is part of the key, we need to understand it fully. Stay sharp. This isn't over yet. The further they ventured into the strange landscape, the more bizarre it became. The geometric patterns in the ground were no longer just designs, they had become paths, roads leading them deeper into the heart of the planet. And the more they walked, the more they felt the presence of something watching them. It wasn't the planet itself this time, but the feeling that they were not alone. Captain, Teal called out, his voice tight. I'm getting strange readings from ahead. It looks like... Before he could finish, Zara held up a hand, signaling for silence. The air around them had changed. It was thicker now, colder, and filled with a static charge that made her hair stand on end. The ground trembled again, but this time, it wasn't just the surface shifting, it was as if the entire planet was shifting beneath their feet. And then they saw it. A massive, towering structure rose before them, unlike any building Zara had ever encountered. It was a monument to something ancient, something that transcended the known universe. It was the size of a mountain, its surface shimmering with the same metallic sheen they had seen earlier, but now it was pulsating with energy. The strange symbols from the first monument were etched into its surface, glowing with an intensity that seemed to echo the very heartbeat of the planet itself. This is it, Zara breathed, stepping forward, her voice barely a whisper. This is the source. As she and the crew approached, the air seemed to vibrate with an unsettling energy. Every step they took seemed to make the structure more alive, more aware of their presence. Zara could feel the weight of it pressing down on her, urging her to turn back, to leave before they were consumed by the unknown forces at play. But she resisted. This was their mission. They had come this far. And they would not leave until they uncovered the truth. Captain, there's something, Lorna began, but her voice trailed off as the structure before them shifted. A door, large enough to fit the entire crew, opened in the side of the mountain-sized monument, revealing a dark, swirling abyss beyond. Zara didn't hesitate. We go in. Now. They entered the structure without question, weapons at the ready, but no sooner had they crossed the threshold than the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening boom. The air inside was heavy with the same strange charge that had filled the atmosphere outside. It smelled faintly of metal, but it also carried an undertone of something ancient, something that hadn't been touched by time. The corridor they were in stretched out endlessly in front of them, its walls covered in more of the symbols they had seen. As they walked further, the symbols seemed to glow brighter, their intensity growing with each step they took. It was as if the structure itself was responding to their presence, eager to show them something, or to punish them for intruding. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, so loud that it seemed to shake the very walls. Why have you come? Zara froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice wasn't coming from any one individual, it felt like it was coming from everywhere, from the very heart of the planet itself. We didn't come here to invade, Zara called out, her voice steady but filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. We came to understand. We came to help. The voice laughed, low and cold, resonating through the chamber. Help? You are not capable of helping. You do not understand what you are dealing with. You are ants in the path of a god. We understand more than you think, Zara said, her eyes narrowing. We understand fear. And we understand power. Whatever you are, whatever this place is, we will not bow to it. There was a long pause, and then the voice spoke again, but this time, it was different. It wasn't mocking, nor was it filled with disdain. Instead, there was a hint of something else, curiosity, perhaps even respect. Fear, the voice echoed. You think you understand fear? You are right. The galaxy fears you, humans. You are a force of nature that even we cannot fully comprehend. You are both the greatest threat and the greatest hope for this universe. Zara's mind raced. The galaxy feared them? She had heard whispers before, of course, rumors about humanity's rise and the power they possessed. But she had never thought it would be anything more than just talk. Now, facing something far beyond her comprehension, she realized that humanity's reputation was far greater than she had ever imagined. Then why test us? Lorna demanded, her voice raw with emotion. Why trap us here? Why put us through this if you want our help? The voice was silent for a moment, before it spoke again, its tone now tinged with sadness. You are not the first to come. Many have tried. Some sought power. Others sought knowledge. But you are different. You are the first to come with the courage to confront the truth. The walls around them began to glow brighter, and the symbols on the ground shifted, forming a new pattern, a pattern that felt like a key. The chamber seemed to pulse with energy, as though it was alive with purpose. Zara didn't know if they had just passed another test, or if they had simply angered the planet even further. But she did know one thing, they were no longer just intruders. They were part of something much larger than they had ever anticipated. And as the voice fell silent again, Zara steeled herself for whatever came next, knowing that they had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. The walls around them pulsed with an eerie light, as though the planet itself was alive, breathing in sync with the rising tension. The strange symbols on the ground shifted again, forming a new pattern, one more complex and intricate than the last. It wasn't just an image now, but a series of interconnected lines that twisted together into something unmistakable, a map. A map of the planet. And beyond it, a map of the galaxy. Zara's heart skipped a beat. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't just a monument. It wasn't just a test. This was a communication. This was the heart of something ancient, something vast, something that had been waiting for them. Waiting for humanity. She looked at her crew, each of them frozen in place, their gazes fixed on the glowing symbols beneath their feet. For a moment, they stood in silence, not knowing what would happen next. The voice that had filled the chamber moments before had disappeared, but its presence still lingered, like a shadow hanging over them. You were right, Lorna whispered, her voice filled with awe. This is bigger than we could have imagined. We found it, Zara. The truth. Zara's mind raced. The galaxy feared them? What did that mean? They had always known that humanity's potential was great, but to be feared by the very forces that ruled the stars was something new. And what was the truth they had uncovered? Was it a warning? A gift? A challenge? Captain, Teal said, his voice breaking through her thoughts. I'm getting something. It's a message. A command, almost. The map, it's activating. It's showing us a path. A way forward. Zara stepped forward, her boots echoing in the silence of the chamber. The glowing symbols shifted again, rearranging themselves to form an image, a galaxy. A series of points of light blinked on the map, each one corresponding to a different system, a different world. As the map zoomed in, one point of light stood out, glowing brighter than the others. It was a location on the edge of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of known space. Is that Earth? Lorna asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. No, Zara said, shaking her head slowly. It's not Earth. But it's close. It's a place we've never seen before. A place humanity has never reached. A strange compulsion tugged at her chest. She didn't know why, but she knew, without a doubt, that this was where they had to go. The answers they were seeking lay there, on that distant world. The planet that had tested them, that had shown them its power, was not just a challenge. It was a waypoint. A stepping stone toward something greater. Prepare the vanguard for departure, Zara ordered. We're going there. The journey was long, the vanguard cutting through the endless void of space, its engines humming steadily as they followed the coordinates given to them by the mysterious force on the planet. The crew was silent for most of the trip, their minds consumed by the events they had witnessed and the knowledge they had gained. What was waiting for them at their destination? What kind of civilization, or intelligence, could leave behind such a message? Zara sat alone in the command center, staring at the map of the galaxy on the screen before her. The point of light grew larger with every passing day, and with it, the weight of their mission grew heavier. They were about to enter a place humanity had never ventured before, a place that could either be their salvation or their undoing. Captain, Lorna's voice broke through her thoughts. We've arrived. Zara stood up from her chair, her pulse quickening. On screen. The image that appeared on the monitor was nothing short of breathtaking. The planet that filled the screen was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was massive, its surface covered in a shimmering blue glow, almost as if it was alive, its atmosphere swirling with energy. At the center of the planet, a massive structure rose from the surface, even larger than the one they had encountered earlier. It was ancient, yet somehow, it pulsed with power, as though it had never truly died. This is it, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is the heart of everything. They made their descent, the vanguard cutting through the atmosphere with ease. The moment they broke through the clouds, the massive structure before them seemed to welcome them, its surface shifting, opening as though it had been expecting them all along. There was no turning back now. This was the final step, the culmination of everything they had learned. The ship touched down softly, and Zara led her team out of the vanguard, the ground beneath their feet solid but humming with an unknown energy. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached the enormous structure, its surface reflecting the light of distant stars. They could feel it, the pull, the draw, the understanding that whatever lay inside was waiting for them. Ready? Zara asked, her voice steady. Lorna nodded. As ready as we'll ever be. They entered the structure, their steps echoing through the vast chamber. Inside, the air was cool, almost sterile, and the walls were covered in more of the strange symbols. But this time, the symbols seemed familiar. They seemed to recognize them, as if they had been waiting for them to arrive. Captain, Teal said, his voice trembling. I don't understand. The symbols, they're showing us. Zara moved closer, her eyes scanning the symbols on the wall. This time, they weren't just glowing, they were shifting, transforming before her eyes. And then, as though the entire structure had come alive, the symbols rearranged themselves into an image, a figure, tall and ethereal, glowing with the same blue light that had surrounded the planet. The figure's face was obscured, but Zara could feel its presence, its power. It was watching them. You have come, the voice echoed through the chamber, the same voice they had heard on the planet. You have passed the tests. Now you must understand. The galaxy fears you, humanity. You are the next step in the evolution of this universe. The words hit Zara like a tidal wave. The realization struck her with full force, they weren't just discovering the past, they were shaping the future. Humanity wasn't just a part of the galaxy anymore. They were the key to its survival, to its rebirth. The voice continued. The galaxy dreads you, but it is your destiny to change everything. To bring balance. To challenge the power structures that have ruled for eons. You are the force of change, of creation. And you will decide what comes next. Zara stood there, her mind reeling. They had always known that humanity had the potential for greatness, but to hear it spoken so plainly, so clearly, it was overwhelming. The weight of their future was now on their shoulders. As the voice fell silent, Zara took a deep breath. She looked at her crew, their faces filled with awe, fear, and hope. This was their moment. The moment they would either rise to meet or fall beneath. Let's do this, Zara said, her voice steady, full of resolve. We're not just explorers anymore. We're the ones who will shape the future of the galaxy. And with that, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. The galaxy might fear them, but humanity had always feared nothing. And now, they would prove it.